So with that, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Letitia Cook, who's from the Department of Real Estate, to just introduce our next speaker to us. And we will start our journey for the morning. All right. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you today somebody from SAPOA's PropTech committee. So SAPOA is the South African Property Owners Association. And in South Africa, collectively, all of you, your parents, and everyone who owns property owns 5.8 trillion rands worth of property, which is a fair whack of cash, right? If you look at it in world perspective, in the world, the property value is 281 trillion US dollars. That's more than all the gold ever mined on Earth. It's more than all the stocks and shares ever sold on stock exchanges across the world. So it's a big industry, and we're getting smarter. And thanks to awesome ninjas like Dr. Kalei Davey, all of us are getting smarter together. So, okay, I would like to introduce to you today Matt. And I met Matt not long ago. And now I've lost him. Hang on, sorry. Okay, so we met at the SAPOA PropTech committee, and Matt is the founder and co-founder and owner of Redimension Capital, which is a business focused on real estate technology and sustainability investments in South Africa and globally. So Matt has over 14 years of experience in working across both South Africa and European markets, predominantly in investment banking, where he previously led the Standard Bank's global real estate advisory business. Welcome, Matt.
Perfect. Good. Morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. If I'd known it was going to be so detailed, I might have dialed it back a little bit. So I have been in the real estate industry for quite some time, mainly in the South African market, but I was in London for around 8 years, but not building buildings, but investing in buildings. So that is my background. So you will know a lot more about how buildings are constructed and about BIM models and ultimately what will become digital twins than I. But hopefully I'll explain a little bit about what I'm doing. I am here to talk about a recent report that we compiled for SAPOA. So we recognized as a business that the South African real estate sector was very slow in adopting technology into their businesses. And we worked very hard with SAPOA to establish the SAPOA PropTech subcommittee, really to broaden the engagement between real estate owners and the PropTech sector, which is really a bunch of technology jockeys who have great ideas and are trying to solve South Africa's problems. So taking a step back, PropTech in its broadest sense is any technology that engages with the built environment, and that goes across all different kind of phases of the asset life cycle, from development through to decommissioning, and all phases of sort of operations, from property development through to, for example, property services and portfolio management. I mentioned, so in South Africa, we are a long way behind the rest of the developed world in terms of developing technology solutions for our real estate industry. But having said that, we mirror the rest of the world in that, as Letitia said, real estate is our most valuable asset class, and it is also our biggest contributor to sustainability issues, to global greenhouse gases. Real estate globally contributes 39% of global CO2 emissions. That's embedded and operational carbon, embedded carbon being how much carbon is produced to produce a brick or to produce concrete, and then operational carbon, how much carbon is produced to sort of run a building, the electricity, the water, the waste management. So it's a huge contributor. And a lot of the cities globally, there's a C40 cities initiative. South Africa has 4 municipalities that have signed up to that, and they've committed to net zero buildings, new buildings by 2030, and to retrofit existing buildings to be net zero by 2050. Now, the reality is that that is simply unachievable with the technology we have today, and we need a lot of innovation in order to deliver those outcomes. So PropTech, as its broadest sort of definition, is a huge potential opportunity to service this massive industry. So a little bit on Redimension Capital. So this is my business. I founded it with my business partner, a guy called Peter Clark. Peter used to run the property investment business for 91 Asset Management. And he and I identified this gap between what the real estate sector was doing, looking to achieve, and how it was engaging with technology. And as I mentioned, the underlying entrepreneurs who are creating amazing solutions to service what they perceive to be the sector's problems. But there was this disconnect. And a real challenge in allocating capital to these companies to be able to develop the solutions and grow their businesses to service enterprise-grade clients. So we spent close to 2 years engaging with the real estate sector to understand the challenges. And then, as any good South African does, we went offshore, saw a great solution, and brought it back to South Africa. So what we've done is raise capital from the real estate sector. We are, in fact, today closing our first fund. We've raised capital from Growth Point, Investec Property Fund, Liberty Property, RMB, and others. And we are investing that into early stage, invariably early stage, technology companies that are servicing the built environment, effectively creating this ecosystem of investment, really to just drive new ideas and capital into the innovation space within the built environment. I don't know why it's gone blue, but a little bit on the SAPOA PropTech subcommittee. So this was formed last year. There are a range of associations that operate within the built environment in South Africa. You know, at the bottom here, there's the Africa PropTech Forum, SA PropTech, SA REITs, the Shopping Centre Council, et cetera, et cetera. And when we were forming this subcommittee, we really wanted to make sure that we had the collective buy-in of those associations such that the messaging for the sector wasn't lost between the associations. So the SAPOA PropTech subcommittee has representation from, for example, the Green Building Council of South Africa and SA REIT sitting on it. So it really acts as a kind of holistic organization that is looking to achieve 3 fundamental goals. One is to obviously drive improved performance in the property sector through the use of technology. The other is to grow the property technology sector so as to service the built environment. And then obviously the third one, just to educate, inform, and create a platform where the real estate sector can learn about and engage with the PropTech industry. So with that in mind and bearing a thought for Pete and I mean, we had been in the market for 2 years engaging with PropTechs, engaging with REITs, engaging with the association. So we were well placed to pull together this report, which was published, I think, last month, if I'm not mistaken. And it really pulls together all of those discussions, all of those interactions, and all of our research into a holistic document. It is high level, but that's the stage at which we are looking to engage with the sector. A lot of the sector, when we started our journey, talking to some of the CEOs of some of the largest listed REITs in the country, said, well, what is PropTech? So we're very much kind of starting that journey to educate about the opportunity that tech presents to the sector. And it's the culmination, really, of all those discussions. It also includes, an overview of the global PropTech market, the South African PropTech market. There was a survey conducted late in 2022 by SAPOA, which engaged with over 50 real estate sector CEOs to understand their engagement with PropTech. Did they have a strategy? How were they perceiving technology disrupting the sector? So the results of that survey. We cover a little bit around the funding of the market, which I'll show you briefly, but it is certainly a high growth sector. Globally, it's the fastest growing sector of venture investment, but from a very low base. And in the report, we also cover a couple of executive interviews. A few executives were kind enough to give us their time. So we spent a lot of time mapping the market. This is by no means an exhaustive list of the companies that are trying to service and provide solutions to the built environment. And you can see, property is just such a massive asset class that the opportunities to service them are equally massive. You look at management software, the future of retail, how e-commerce is disrupting the current mall that exists, how landlords in the retail space are having to engage not only with their anchor tenants and hope they pull people across a mall, but are now having to engage directly with the end consumer, improve the user experience for them, and make sure that they can build a relationship to bring them back to the mall. Understanding how people are moving within that retail context is increasingly important. We talk about payments and processes. It was astonishing to me that, rent, for example, rent is a third of people's disposable income. The rental market in South Africa is a 300 billion rand industry, and there is very little in the way of payment reconciliation tools. You have property managers that are trying to reconcile a payment where the reference is rent to an underlying tenant. So, real fairly simple problems, but that are massive problems for the sector, and you have people building their businesses to try and solve those problems. So we mapped out over 150 in the SA environment, either based here servicing this market or based offshore servicing this market. But there are plenty more. And in fact, we're coming across new companies, new names every day. So we're constantly mapping the space, but what we are looking to do as Redimension Capital is to find the companies that we think have the best chance of success, that are properly solving solutions for the real estate sector, and to back them. And then as SAPOA, as an association, looking to build this sector more broadly and with greater depth to service the market. I mentioned the survey. I won't spend a lot of time talking on this. The greater details are in the report. Suffice to say, what the sector showed is what I've explained, that the real estate market is certainly ripe for disruption, for technology. Everyone can see it and everyone expects it to come, but that no one is prepared for it. Certainly not in the South African market. We are seeing executive platforms hiring dedicated resource to manage their technology strategies, but only very recently in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. So the broader results are included in the report. I mentioned the state of funding, and this is a global snapshot, and what you can see is that PropTech went from being really the unloved child of innovation capital back in 2013 to being the fastest growing area of venture investment. A lot of this capital went into the US markets, but more recently into Australia, Asia, North Africa, and Europe. And really, we asked ourselves the question: what catalyzed the significant growth in investment? And really, what it came down to is that REITs and property companies were trying to innovate for themselves, but they didn't have the right skills, expertise, and internal kind of governance structures to be able to move quickly. And then similarly, there's inherent competition between real estate owners. So, I want to improve my experience of the building so that I compete with my neighbor's building and I can obviously get a tenant. So, this inherent conflict meant that even if I developed a great product, as for example, say a Growth Point, I couldn't sell that product to a Redefine because Redefine didn't want to invite the wolf in through the back door. And then the other thing about real estate is it's just such a huge market that no one actually has a dominant market share. It's a very fragmented industry. So if you think about healthcare in South Africa, you've got sort of the big four hospital groups. You think about banking, you've got the big four banks. They can innovate for themselves, distribute it across their business, the underlying technology, and that's enough market share for that business to have a sort of a healthy foot in the market. Real estate doesn't have that. So Growth Point, the biggest property company in South Africa, they can use a piece of tech, but they don't actually generate a good return on investment unless they can sell that technology to other parties. So what my partner and I saw globally was the establishment of these independent platforms. So the biggest in the US is a company called Fifth Wall. Fifth Wall has aggregated capital from some of the biggest landlords in the world, Prologis, Brookfield, et cetera, and a lot of the names are in this box here on the right-hand side. And they've aggregated capital from those real estate sector stakeholders and are channeling that into into property technology, and more recently they've just raised a sustainability-focused fund, but again, sustainability in the built environment. They have $3.5 billion under management. So it's a huge and growing industry, but it needs more solutions, it needs more ideas, it needs business people to come together to kind of help those ideas grow and establish and take hold in the market. And that's what SAPOA is trying to assist with, and ourselves at Redimension. So there are associations, and we cover them briefly in the report just to introduce them. I suppose, SAPOA I've mentioned, Africa PropTech Forum we're represented on, SAPOA PropTech and Africa PropTech Africa were the sort of the first associations, not really with representation from the real estate sector, more a sort of a collection of PropTechs coming together to collaborate. I suppose just points to flag on Africa PropTech Forum, they do host a startup competition that we sponsor. That is, I think entries are open for that startup competition. Typically it's businesses that have made some revenue, have some kind of product market fit, but not necessarily profitable. And then I suppose more importantly, Greenovate, which we are working with GrowthPoint on. Greenovate is really, it's a competition that encourages students with great ideas for the built environment to come forward, pitch those ideas and get funding. I mentioned the executive contributors, obviously just to say thank you to them, and we did try and kind of bring in a broad group of contributors. No one from sort of the development industry, but we've got Jackie from Attack, Estienne, who's the CEO of the South African business for GrowthPoint. Kundai runs a listed equities investment business called Sesfikile Capital. They only invest in listed real estate. Lawrence Rapp runs Vukile, which is a sort of a rural retail-focused REIT, and then Galetti is one of the fastest-growing local brokers. John is the CEO of that business. So that's the report. It is available on the SAPOA website. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day. I'm going to talk again later today. So if you have any questions, please approach me. I'm more than willing to talk about what we're doing and what SAPOA is doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Matt. Please reach out, ask questions. There's a lot of opportunities. Plug in. Showing up is half the job, right? So now we're going to move over to probably the smartest man in the room about BIM. Is it not? Is it not?
Richard, you've got, where's Roddy?
Okay, one of the smartest men in the room about BIM, Michiel. And if you've ever been to Modena on a course for training, or even in our classrooms, you probably met this guy. And I'd like to maybe introduce yourself so you can tell your story. And he's going to talk to you about